This episode brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, which is a natural sleep and sound healing portal helping people globally to get to sleep faster and stay asleep longer through TAUMMHOMS.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com.
It's My Right Stuff with your host, Grammy Award-winning record producer and inventor, Toby Wright. My Right Stuff is brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taumms.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com. I'm your announcer, Grinnin' Barrett. Here's Toby.
Hey, I'm Lord Toby Wright, and this is My Right Stuff News. All right, welcome to My Right Stuff Good News Network. Let's kick things off with the music news. Everything Was Beautiful is the newest album from Spiritualized. It's the 9th full-length studio release for Jay Spaceman's space rock band, and it was recorded at 11 different studios. Well, Paint This Town is Old Crow Medicine Show's newest release. The 7th full-length studio release for Nashville-based Americana band was co-produced with Matt Ross Spang. And the latest full-length release for London-based duo Bob Vylan was self-produced, mixed, and recorded with contributions from Laurent Lags Bernard of Gallows, Bobby Bentham of Strange Bones, Joss and John Skintz of The Skints. And it's titled Bob Vylan Presents The Price of Life. Looking forward to that one. Well, Edgar Winter releases Brother Johnny. Edgar Winter's tribute album to his brother, blues guitarist Johnny Winter, which features, you ready for this list? Greg Bissonette, Joe Bonamassa, Doyle Bramhall II, John McPhee, Robin Ford, Billy Gibbons, David Grissom, Taylor Hawkins, Warren Haynes, Steve Lukather, Michael McDonald, Keb Mo, Phil X, Doug Rappaport, Bobby Rush, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Ringo Starr, Derek Trucks, Waddy Wachtel, and Joe Walsh. Now that's a lineup. I can't wait to hear this one. Oh my goodness. Well, now on over to film and TV. The Flight Attendant Season 2 premiered on HBO Max. Well, here's hoping the new season continues the tonal high wire act, screwball caper, spy thriller, childhood trauma narrative, with the benefit of Kaylee Kuko and Rosie Perez. We Own This City is on HBO. In 20 years since The Wire premiered on HBO, David Simon brings us back to Baltimore with an adaptation of Justin Fenton's book that traces the corruption and criminality of the Baltimore PD's Gun Trace Task Force, with an ensemble including John Barenthal and Wire vets Jamie Hector and Daryl Britt Gibson. The Batman is now on HBO Max. It's a dark horror epic. Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz are Batman and Catwoman in an apocalyptic operatic comic book saga that's a million miles from the Marvel movies. Well, now over to the world of sports. Well, this weekend is the Rolex Emilia Romagna Grand Prix in Italy. Let's see if Red Bull can come up with some answers to the Flying Ferraris on their home track in F1. Well, 2 weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to be in the pits at the Long Beach Grand Prix, and man, it was really exciting to watch the IMSA race with Cadillac taking 1 and 2 in their class, and Corvette Racing coming in third after getting a drive-through penalty for a really crazy wheel nut incident. You can see that on YouTube. It's amazing. And the Indy race was very exciting as well, with Joseph Newgarden bringing it home for Chevrolet and Team Penske. Roman Grosjean giving it his all, coming in second with a very, very tight finish. Congrats to all those teams for a very exciting race. And thank you to my friend Russ for introducing me to Roger Penske. That was the highlight of my weekend. Well, now over to Gear and Tech. Behringer recently announced 3 new synths on Facebook that would be joining their lineup for 2022. First up is the Pro VS Soul Synth, a mini synth that draws inspiration from the Prophet VS digital vector synthesizer by Sequential Circuits. Following the announcement of the Prophet VS Soul, Behringer also teased another big small surprise. This turned out to be the JP4000, which is a powerful and portable 4-voice hybrid paraphonic synthesizer with 2 analog modeling oscillators per voice, an analog filter, an arpeggiator, and OLED. In their most recent announcement, Behringer revealed the Saturn Soul synthesizer, which is inspired by the classic Jupiter synthesizers from the 80s. While they are apparently also working on a full-size synthesizer based on the Jupiter 8, the Saturn Soul is an inexpensive and compact version. And you can find Behringer here. Well, that's all the news that's making the news this week, April 22nd, 2022. Well, now over to you, Lord Rage. Oh, well, hey, and welcome back to My Right Stuff, which is a film, TV, sports, music, adventure, and inspirational lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Lord Toby Rage Wright, and today we have an amazing story of inspiration with a man that's on the fast track to kick some butt wherever he drives. His name is Andy Tucker, and he's a member of an auto racing team called Team BRIT. He's also disabled, and he was rendered as such in an unfortunate accident in January of 2013. The team race endurance races mostly in Europe. Well, more on our guest in a moment, but before we meet him, I want to thank all of you, our supporters who stream, download, watch, and support My Right Stuff. Keep spreading the word, my friends. We really, really do appreciate it. And be sure to click on our show notes below to follow our link tree for a full list of all the channels we stream on, as well as all of our sites and social media platforms. If you'd like to donate to My Right Stuff, please do. And please follow our support link. Every single dollar helps support the My Right Stuff crew who make all of this possible. And of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as the podcast channel of your choice, so you never miss a single episode. Well, after this episode, please head on over to myrightstuff.com and click on the store tab to pick up some snazzy merch for those bodies, which would make an ideal present for your nearest and dearest. So go get them now. But before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce my co-host, the man who's always in pole position and never in the pits, my distinguished co-host, Sir Gareth Dighton. Hey, Gareth, I understand you have some new music that you've been checking out this week. You want to share?
You know me, Toby. I always want to share my music choices with you, my friend. It's good to see you as always. Well, today I've got 2 very contrasting bands for you. You know me. The first band is a 2-piece band called Wargasm UK, and they say they make angry music for sad people. They make such a beautiful noise. It is incredible. Imagine Atari Teenage Riot having a fight with early Slipknot, and you'll kind of be in the right ballpark. It's a heady mix of punk, industrial, electronica, and metal. It's quite incredible stuff. They're currently on tour with Limp Bizkit in the States, so if any of our viewers are heading out to the shows, get there early and to check them out. Then is massive contrast. The next thing I'm very excited about is the return of Icelandic indie legends and one of my personal favourites, Sigur Rós. They've recently recorded a brand new album for release later this year, and they've announced a world tour. Currently on a tour in the Americas, both North America and South America, and I genuinely got extremely excited when I read about both the new tour and the new album from one of my favourite all-time bands. They're simply incredible, both live and on record, and I, for one, will definitely be checking that out.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a fun bunch.
Well, Toby, as a change to how we usually do things, I'm going to hijack this part of the show and I'm going to introduce you to our guest because he's an old friend of mine. He's a man I first met many years ago through the
Okay.
South Wales heavy metal scene. Following a horrific motorcycle accident, he was left with life-changing injuries and he dusted himself off and he is now a race car driver for Team BRIT, a team of all disabled drivers who compete against able-bodied teams and beat them on a regular basis.
Oh, man, that sounds so good, Gareth. And when you told me about this guy, I knew we needed to get him on the show and have a chat with him. I know you guys are friends, and I can't wait to tell the world his inspirational story. So let's put the pedal to the metal and go.
Well, certainly, Toby, it's time to get in the starting grid and race towards the checkered flag of questions. Let's have a nice warm welcome to my friend, musician, and race car driver, Andy Tucker. Hey, Andy, my man, how are you doing today?
Not too bad at all, thanks, Gareth. How are you?
Oh, very well, mate. It's really good to catch up with you and really glad to have you on the podcast as well.
Thank you very much for having me along. It's been a while, let's face it. It's, 9 years since we've actually seen each other, so...
Yeah, about that, easily about that, to be fair. But, we've actually kept in touch, and that's been fantastic. And it's, like I said, when we were kind of planning these things, it was kind of, I know a man who I think would kind of fit the bill quite nicely on this podcast, to be honest. And thank you very much for taking us up on that offer and going to join us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me along. I'm looking forward to having a good chat with yourself and Toby, and yeah, it's a little bit of a dream come true, really. Obviously, growing up listening to heavy metal and rock music and being with yourself, my old radio host, and Toby, who's essentially created the sounds of my childhood. So
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Well, Andy, before we get started, thank you very much. And I wanted to get some background. You and Gareth have known each other for a while. How do you know each other, and how did your paths cross?
So Gareth was a local radio host back in South Wales between the years of 2010, 2011. And, I sent over some music that he played for my band, and we bumped into each other at a few local gigs. And yeah, good times. He's a good man.
Very, very good times.
Awesome. Yes, I know that. Well, I think you have a nickname for him, too. Can you share that with us here at My Right Stuff?
Mr. Daitoon O'Doom. Yes, those were the days. I think you need to get a T-shirt made of that one myself.
Been a long time since somebody called me that, Tucker.
Hey, well, it's been a long time since anyone's called me Tucker. It's normally just Andy now.
Right. Okay. I'll have to kind of readjust my mindset for the duration of the podcast then.
It's fine. Keep calling me Tucker. It reminds me of the old days, mate.
Just as well, really. You had some success locally with actually sort of some of the bands you actually were in. They always went down extremely well on kind of every show I've ever hosted, really. Just so our listeners know a little bit more about you, have you always been a fan of metal?
Yeah. I grew up listening to bands like Alice in Chains, Iron Maiden, Slayer, Kiss. My father didn't really agree with it, more so because he was actually a Roman Catholic. So some of the lyrics were a little bit too... to his disdain, but yeah, I fell in love with rock and heavy metal at a pretty young age. I think I bought my first album when I was 10 years old. Pretty certain it was a Kiss album, but then it developed and grew up and got into the slightly darker side of metal. Started listening to your radio show, which probably didn't help matters. But I've always been involved. Always loved heavy metal. There's something about it that just feeds the adrenaline, and I think it helps me focus as well when I go racing. So music's a brilliant tool, and I think it creates connections. Prime example, look at ourselves. We spent many years apart, but we still have that instant connection of heavy metal music and rock music. Totally. And I think I stand out in the paddock more than most because, I'm covered in tattoos and most race drivers aren't. So it transfers over into my world now.
Well, I understand you had a really terrible motorcycle accident, which, to be frank, you were lucky to be alive after. Can you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, so I was actually on my way to the green rooms in Treforest where my band practiced. I was all ready to get rocking and rolling and preparing for a gig that we had coming up. And on my way to practice, I got knocked off my motorcycle by a gentleman that was road raging. He'd actually already hit the motorcycle on the left-hand side, then pulled forward to a set of traffic lights and come to a stop Well, that was me, myself. And he decided to just drive straight through me at about 45, 50 miles per hour, sent me sky high up in the air. And yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I spent 6.5 years in hospital having various different treatments, surgeries, ended up seeing a lot of different mental health specialists as well, because I developed post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Because let's face it, it's not every day that kind of circumstance happens. I don't know of anyone else that's ever been targeted by somebody on the road. So it was very difficult to wrap my head around, and the recovery side of things was long as well. You know, my last surgery, bear in mind this happened in 2013, my last surgery was actually in November 2019. So it was a long time being treated and recovering from it. I dare say I'm still recovering now, and I actually use motorsport as not just my physical therapy, but therapy for my mental health as well, which has helped massively. I'm sure Gareth would say, you know, he's watched my progress over the last few years, and I'm in a much better place now since joining the team and progressing with motorsport than I was when I didn't have motorsport in my life.
Right. Wow.
Totally. Do you
Sorry
mind
to hear of your injuries?
Absolutely, it's just horrific, man. Do you mind talking through the injuries that you kind of initially had?
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, a lot of them are still pretty obvious to this day. So if you look at my right hand, my fingers do not straighten out in comparison to my left hand. Then this arm doesn't go up any higher, whereas this one does, because my arm is actually pushed forward by quite a long way. The scapula on the back of my shoulder was snapped, and we didn't actually figure that out until many years after the incident. So my shoulder blade actually sits round on the side of my rib cage rather than around the back where it should do. I've had a knee reconstruction where they've used the hamstring to create a graft, so that it essentially has made my ACL ligament and several other ligaments in my knee. I've had a hand-sized chunk of muscle cut out of the back of my calf. My ankle is still inverted to this day, which essentially means that rather than having 2 feet that sit naturally and flat, my right foot is twisted up underneath me. Then there's scoliosis and spondylitis in my spine, trapped nerves in my neck. I get right-sided facial disturbances, so apologies throughout if this side of my face starts dropping. Don't worry, I haven't had a stroke. I'm fine. But yeah, it's essentially head-to-toe injuries. They're never going to go away. I've lived with it now for 9 years, and you know, motorsport has helped me to progress with it and push my body to the absolute limits. So it's fantastic that I have that as a form of therapy, because at the end of the day, it's genuinely helped me. You know, I started off racing with a team and I was on 2 crutches. I've now managed to get down to using no crutches at some periods of times, but I'll then have to rely on 1 at least. So it's a bit difficult, but I also end up having to wear a nice little ankle brace at times, which is completely solid and has no flex in it. So that I've got, you know, things that help me out, but motorsport is the biggest help in my life.
That's excellent. So let's talk about some of the inspiration, because man, you're giving me the heebie-jeebies with all the accident and stuff, and I'm just imagining you all tangled up, and just it's bad news. And I know you've been through a shit ton of rehab, both physically and mentally. But what was your inspiration to turn to auto racing of all things, considering it's one of the most dangerous and unusual, and it's usually an able-bodied person's sport?
It is. I mean, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I've always been an adrenaline junkie, and I don't think that side of my life is ever going to change. I've grown up skating. I've grown up riding motorcycles, and I just love speed, you know. So for me, I guess the inspiration came from finding a 3-year study that was carried out on Team BRIT, who are the team that I raced for. And that showed that the benefits of motorsport upon veterans that had served in Afghanistan and Iraq, it just totally changed their lives. It gave them something to look forward to, something to focus on, rather than the negatives that they've been through in their life. So I looked into it a little bit more and found out more details about the team. Watched a 20-minute long documentary on them on YouTube, and I saw that they had this hand control technology that would allow me to control a car. And I thought, well, if veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan have done it, what's stopping me from doing it? And I looked further into the team and saw that they had people that had gone through amputations. They had people that were paraplegic. So it was the instant key for me. And I essentially just turned the ignition, and I haven't stopped since. I attended an academy day at Donington, which is one of the premier race circuits within the UK, trying out the car and the hand control technology that the team had, and I was hooked instantly. You know, I've always loved motorsports. I did karting in my younger years up until I was from the age of 7 up until I was about 19 years old. And I've just had this affinity and this love of going as fast as possible all the time. Gareth will confirm that when I was on stage, I was always flying myself across, throwing myself into the crowd and just going full pace along with the band. So to me, it seemed like the perfect blend of both worlds. And yeah, it's a non-stop journey at the moment that I'm loving every second of. You know, as you can see behind me, we pulled off some pretty prestigious wins recently. We're leading our championship, and we go to prove that disability in the world of motorsport really does not matter. And I think that's the best thing about it for me, is we get to compete on a level playing field against able-bodied drivers and beat them in the process, which is just fantastic.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's fantastic. Good. I love it.
You actually said you sort of attended an open day up in sort of Donington Park. Is actually that how you sort of joined Team BRIT?
Yeah, so that's how I joined. They've created what's essentially an academy. So you can go along and have a little tester of motorsport, or you can really push yourself to the limit and try and become a race driver. So that was my goal when I joined the team, was I wanted to go racing. So I pushed myself as hard as I could whilst I was there. And I came home the one day, had an email from the team owner saying, "Hey, Andy, you know, we think you're pretty good. We'd like you to join the team. Are you up for it?" And I just snapped that opportunity up with both hands. You know, okay, this one may be a little bit twisted, but there was nothing that was holding me back at that moment in time. So yeah, 3 years later, here we are. You know, I started off in a tiny little BMW 116, which was possibly the slowest car on the grid. But it didn't matter to me because I was learning, I was racing, and it was setting me up for bigger and better things. So then last year I was racing a BMW M240, which had about 500 brake horsepower, ridiculously quick in a straight line, brilliant through the corners. And that then set me up for what I'm racing now, which is an Aston Martin GT4, you know, the premier British sports car. And it's an absolute animal. I love it. I don't ever want to get out of it when the race ends, but I have to. So, yeah, if I could have it on the driveway, I would.
Soon you will, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I hope so. I'll have to pay the boss a lot of money for that to happen.
Well, maybe you'll get a street version. Who knows, you know?
I don't think the street version would be quite as good as the race car. But, yeah, I think if I have to settle for the street version, I will.
There you go. Well, how many team drivers do you have? Like, I know you race endurance, right? So there's got to be more than one. Do you do 24 hours as well as the 12 hours and so on and so forth?
No, well, this is the brilliant thing. We're actually aiming to be the first all-disabled race team to race at the Le Mans 24 hours, which is, you know, as everyone knows, the biggest endurance race in the world. So we have 9 drivers currently. We have 4 cars racing across 3 separate championships, that being British GT, the British Endurance Championship, and the Brit Car Trophy, which is the series that I was in last year. I've now moved up into the British Endurance Championship. I then hope to move up into British GT, and the team has the plan for around 2024 to race in the Le Mans 24 hours. So fingers crossed we can make that happen, because, yeah, that would just be amazing.
Yeah, I want to be there.
Yeah.
Come along. I know it's a long way to travel from America, but feel free.
Yeah.
You know what? I would do that just because I love that race, and I want to see you guys kick ass.
Oh, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You know, if you
So
do manage to make it along, if you manage to come over, then I'm sure we'll have an awesome time. Might even have a little party and a drink afterwards.
Nice.
Never know, right?
You spoke about your car being kind of modified. So what modifications does your current vehicle have? And has that changed from when you first started to race?
So this is the brilliant thing. The team created a set of hand controls, which essentially allows the driver to keep both hands on the wheel. Because normally if you're disabled, you'll have a little push-pull lever by the side of the steering wheel. Trying to think on Toby's cars, or in the States, it might even be on the left. I'm not sure. But it's just a lever that you push forward to accelerate, or pull back to brake, or push forward to brake and pull back to accelerate, which is not great with motorsport. You need to have 2 hands on the wheel rather than one. So we've
Right.
essentially fitted these little paddles behind the steering wheel, similar to what most cars have now, where they'd be changing gear, except these are the controls, the accelerators on the right-hand side, the brakes on the left-hand side. And then we have a little rocker switch that we can use with our thumb to change gear. So it's really simplistic, but incredibly technologically advanced as well. There's a lot of work that goes into making these hand controls work with the car. And they've all been created in-house by Team BRIT. We have a company in Slovenia that machines and manufactures some of the parts for us, but we are the team that created them. And they're in every single one of our cars, but we also have the pedals in there still. So it really doesn't matter what driver is driving the car or how they drive the car. As long as they're disabled, they can come racing with the team. There's people out there that, for example, only have the use of their left arm and their left leg. They could still drive a car on the pedals if they wanted to, but they still then have the option of at least using the foot brake or the hand brake, on the steering wheel. And they can change gear with their thumb rather than having to take their hand off and try and change gear like they would in the manual. So it's the best form of adaptive controls that I've ever seen for a vehicle. And they're game changing. They change people's lives, literally. And that is the best thing about it. It is life changing. The thing that we're pushing at the moment is that we are changing motorsport and we're changing lives, which for me is living proof. It's changed my life completely. And we're changing motorsport in the process. Who else out there has ever seen a disabled race team leading a championship against 50 or 60 different drivers who are fully able-bodied? It's never been done before.
Right.
That's incredible.
That's fabulous. Can you give us some of the specs of your race car, like the top speed and the G-forces that you withstand and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the Aston Martin that we're racing at the moment, that puts out about 470 brake horsepower, so quite a lot. But then we run on fully slick tyres. We've got trick suspension on there, comes like that from the factory and is an out-and-out race car. It's not a road car that's been converted into a race car. It's incredibly quick. 7-speed gearbox, though most of the UK tracks are that small, you'll actually never get it into 7th gear. Has a theoretical top speed of 200 mile an hour, which is plenty quick enough if you ask me. But yeah, we're normally topping out at about 150, 160 miles per hour on the UK circuit. So it would be great to take that over to Le Mans, but we're looking to purchase a GT3 car at the moment because that's what they're doing with Le Mans at the moment. They're changing the regulations so that GT3 cars can race there. So yeah, we've got a McLaren GT4 as well, a BMW 240. That is ridiculously quick as well. You look at it and just think, oh, it's a little BMW with a body kit and a roll cage inside it. No, it's stupidly quick. If anything, it's just as quick as the Aston Martin in a straight line. So yeah, we've got plenty of cars, plenty of high-powered machinery and always looking to get more as well. watch us race. You'd love it.
I definitely will, for sure. Be a life dream.
Awesome.
Well, even if you can't get over here, we've actually just created a fan zone on our website now, so anyone can actually join and watch us live on board in the car, which is something that a lot of other race teams aren't actually offering the fans at the moment. So you get the full driver's perspective of what it's like flying around all the UK circuits. And yeah, if there's any Americans out there watching or anyone else around the world, feel free to join us on www.teambrit.co.uk and you can come and watch the action live with us.
That's awesome.
I definitely will. They have a race schedule on there, I suppose?
Yeah, we've got a full race schedule. As I say, it runs across 3 separate championships now with 4 separate cars and 9 different drivers. So there's always something new and exciting to see. So we've got 4 new rookies on the team now at the moment as well. So it's going to be their first season of racing. And I remember my first season of racing, it gets a little bit chaotic at times. So yeah, there's plenty of action on
I can
there.
imagine.
I bet.
Right.
You actually spoke earlier about like sort of the cars being kind of modified. Are they tailored for each driver, or is it a case the driver has to train for each vehicle?
So the best way that I can explain it is we have what we call stepping stones. You know, you'll start off in something that's a little bit lower powered than the average race car out there, purely so that it helps you learn all of the techniques that you need, like carrying the speed through the corner, braking at the right points, and that actually creates a better driver than just putting somebody straight from, say, a road car into an Aston Martin GT4.
Yeah,
you know, the level of performance is just so different to what you'd expect from anything else. So we start people off in a BMW 118, then we'll move them into the 240, then we've got the Aston Martin, then the McLaren GT4. So there's always that level of progression for the drivers. Because otherwise, you know, if we just take somebody and throw them straight into an Aston Martin or a McLaren, it's going to be a little bit too much for them. You know, they're powerful machines. You need quite a bit of experience to drive them. Yeah. And that's the brilliant thing with the team, with the academy as well, is we actually offer people the opportunity to progress through those ranks and, you know, move up the scale, so to say. So yeah, there's plenty of different machines that we have, but also different ways of teaching the drivers as well. We have a full motion rig, so a full simulator with the hand control technology fitted onto that as well. So it's safer for them to learn then as well, because it's less expensive if you crash into a barrier. That actually happens quite a lot on the simulator as well, which is fantastic to watch, because you can always just have a giggle, someone going straight off the grass into the barrier, whereas you wouldn't be laughing so much if it happened in real life, because that's when it gets expensive.
Right. Wow. So which races do you take part in?
So I race.
There's a whole bunch of different ones.
Yeah, so there's this is the thing with the UK. The motorsport scene is so big. I mean, I'm highly aware that it's big in America with IMSA. There's lots of drag racing associations as well, and plenty of endurance championships over there. But over here we have the Brit Car Trophy, which we race in. That's where the rookies are racing currently. I'm racing in the British Endurance Championship with Luke Pound. He's my co-driver. Okay. Brilliant lad. He actually drives with one arm, which is mind-blowing to see, because you think, hang on, you really need 2 hands on the wheel through some of these corners. And no, it blows your mind watching him drive. That's the only way I can explain it. Then we have Bobby Trundley and Aaron Morgan racing in the British GT Championship as well, which is the highest level of GT racing that you can get to in the UK. So it goes to show that we're not a small race team. We really do push to be bigger and better every single year. And I just love the progression of it, seeing the team evolve and having new drivers come on board and watching all the other guys move up and moving up at the same time myself. It's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I couldn't ever have pictured my life turning out this way from where I was. It's mind-blowing. It's the only way I can explain it.
Right. That's fabulous.
Are there any races that you particularly want to take part in? And that's both you personally and also kind of Team BRIT. I know you've mentioned doing Le Mans. Is there kind of anything else as a team you're working towards?
Yeah, so we're hoping to actually go and take part in some races in America. We'd love to go and do Sebring, but it's a case of having the right car, having all of the right drivers on board for it as well. So we're really pushing for that at the moment. I'd love to do the Nürburgring 24 hours as well, because that is just a ridiculous circuit. let's face it,
It's
barriers,
sick.
this far away from the track, with some of the fastest machines in the world going as fast as they can around the circuit, and just the most dangerous circuit on the planet as well, in my opinion. So I would love to take part in that. As I said, I'm an adrenaline junkie. That's what I've thrived from. So yeah, there's many out there. I think we're looking at Daytona at some point as well, but these are all in the future, far away at the moment. We've got a few steps that we need to jump through at the moment. I'd love to race at Spa as well, but that's on the British GT calendar. So hopefully for me, fingers crossed, that's next year. But yeah, there's so many different races out there that individual drivers want to take part in as well. I think that's the brilliant thing about having the hand control technology on the simulator. We can use that and practice on these tracks long in advance of ever getting there. And we actually have an esports team now as well called Team BRIT, and they take part in a hell of a lot of 24-hour endurance races from the comfort of their own homes, but they're also trying to push themselves as drivers to get into a real race car. So we really want to expand and go big. We're not taking things lightly. We're taking things as serious as anyone else out there, if not a little bit more serious, because being disabled, we feel like we have a point to prove, and we love proving that point as well.
That's excellent.
That's incredible.
So let's talk a little bit about regulations. You mentioned Sebring and other tracks here in the U.S. and IMSA and stuff like that. So I know that there's a lot of different regulations for the car, right? Different specs you have to meet.
Yeah.
Tire size, pressure, engine size, all the stuff, right? That people really don't even think about to make competition competitive, basically. So besides the hand controls, are there other regulations that you guys have to meet that we haven't heard about yet?
One of the big regulations that disabled drivers have to face within the UK, at least, I'm not sure if it applies for other countries, we have to prove that we can get out of the car within 10 seconds should an accident happen, which if you were to watch us do that, it's quite alarming, but also pretty funny at the same time. We literally chuck the door open and try and throw ourselves out as quickly as possible. We don't care if we fall flat on our face on the floor, as long as we're out of the car. Within 10 seconds, we get our race licenses, we get to go racing. There's lots of different regulations throughout the different championships that we're in as well. So, for example, with the Brit Car Trophy, you're not allowed to run slick tyres. You can't have a car that's GT4 specification or comes from the factory as an out-and-out race car. It's got to be like road-based and production-based cars. So if we were to rock up with the Aston Martin, they'd just be like, no, you're not racing that here. But then the same applies within the British Endurance Championship. We wouldn't be able to rock up with the BMW 240 that we have because it's just not built to GT4 specifications. Then there's the different class structures that are within the championships as well. So I think the British Endurance Championship has 5 separate classes now. So that's GT3, GT1s, GT4s, TCRs, and cars built up to GT4 specification. So it's a huge array of cars on the circuit, with massive performance differences between them. And it's quite scary at times, when you've got, for example, a Dodge Viper CC racing with us at the moment. And you see that thing coming in the mirrors, this big giant machine with 2 red stripes coming down the bonnet. You just think, no, I'm getting out of his way, because you don't want to be collected by that thing. It's an absolute monster in comparison to some of the other cars on circuit. So I think regulations between championships, they always vary so much as well. We have over here what we call the Little Blue Book, which is essentially a handbook that comes from Motorsport UK with all of the rules and regulations. So we can always refer back to that and make sure that we're stuck exactly where we need to be. Then the championships that we're in, they'll send out a set of regulations that we have to conform to as well. So it's very strict and very stringent, and if you're breaking the rules in any way, shape or form, you will be heavily penalised for it. Prime example, with the British Endurance Championship, you have to complete a mandatory 2-minute pit stop. If you're slightly quicker than 2 minutes, you will get a penalty. As sadly, we found out last weekend, we actually ended up with a stop-go penalty for 1 second for being 5/10 under 2 minutes. But we still managed to bring home the trophy. So, although we served our penalty, which meant that we had to go into the pits, stop for a second and pull back out, I managed to fight the car up back through the field and get it into P2. So we try and avoid penalties, but when a penalty like that happens and you still manage to get success out of it, you kind of forget about getting the penalty. There's so many different things that can lead to a penalty on track.
Right. Well, you're certainly an inspiration, my friend. And I have to ask one of those weird questions. I have a very, very good friend. His name is Johnny O'Connell. He's a legendary race car driver here in the States and worldwide, obviously, with Corvette Racing and a few others. And he was on our podcast a while back. And I asked him about what was the most horrific crash that he was ever involved in. And he provided some video for that. And holy smoke, car everywhere and, that kind of stuff. And it was broken in half. And he walked away. I was like, holy shit, dude. That's amazing. So I have to pose the same question. Have you ever been in that type of an accident where, the car comes apart and, you're just scared for your life?
So I've had brake failure at 140 miles per hour. That was quite spectacular. That was at Snetterton Circuit coming down the back straight before a sharp left-hand corner. And I touched the brakes and that was it. There was nothing. But luckily there was an escape road that led across some grass. So we kind of ripped the front end of the car off. I've got pieces of it in the next room. That was pretty spectacular. But I think the biggest and best one that we've had as a team was partly my responsibility as well. So we had a turbo that just decided it no longer wanted to be part of the engine and disintegrated, which then shot fuel and flames throughout the back end of the car. And we had 40 foot long flames coming out of the back of the thing at, I think, about 100 miles per hour. Then as I was getting out of the car, I pressed the extinguisher, which is, stopping anything from coming inside the car. They've put the fire out of the back. I'm opening the door and I get a fire extinguisher just pointed and blasted square in my face. So that was pretty different. I didn't need to be put out because I wasn't on fire. I think they just did it as a little precautionary measure. It's nothing too bad. And I hope that we don't have anything bad either because,
Agreed.
If we do serious amounts of damage to the car, then there's a chance that we might have to miss a round. If we do really bad damage to the car where it's completely written off, then we've got to try and buy a new car. And that all costs money, and it costs money to go racing anyway. So I'd rather see the money go into the team and into the next round and, keeping us pushing forward rather than having to repair things all the time. Prime example, I just tagged a Ferrari at Silverstone. It was the slightest little touch. But we ended up with a £3,000 damage bill for the car because the headlight was knackered, the front bumper was split, the wing was split, and that was just 3 small parts on the car. If you think going into a barrier at 100 mile an hour and the damage that would cause, the expense of that would be astronomical in comparison. So it's risk versus reward. Do you really push it and, send it up the inside of somebody and potentially crash it at the same time? Or do you play it safe and try and keep the car on track and bring it home in one piece at the end? It's a fine margin. And I try and err on the side of caution. I really don't want to damage the car too badly, but I'm sure with it being motorsport, it's going to happen one day.
Absolutely. It always does. They say you're not a race car driver until you've had that big one. Another friend of mine, Jan Magnussen, he said his son, Kevin Magnussen, who is back in F1 right now, he wasn't a race car driver until he had his big, huge crash at Macau, which, again, car everywhere. Right. And then Kevin walked away and, Jan was like, all right, my son's a race car driver now. Like, oh my God, dude.
I'm thinking maybe I've already had my big one before becoming a racing driver. So can we count that one? Because if we can, then we're good. I'm a race car driver.
You're actually well on the
way. Yeah. Amen.
Amen for that.
Oh my God. Well, I hope nothing like that happens to you because you've been through yours already.
Absolutely.
Well, if it happens, it happens. I'm completely prepared for it. I think going racing, you expect accidents to happen. You know, we see accidents every single race weekend. There's no ifs or buts about it. And I think that in itself has helped me to kind of get over the incident as well that I had, because you start to realize that, okay, well, these guys are out there trying to race as safely as possible, but it's happened. You know, it's beyond their control. And my set of circumstances, it was beyond my control. There was nothing I could do to stop the guy from driving into me. So it's in a really surreal and strange way that it's actually made me see that shit happens at the end of the day, and there's things that are beyond our control. And I think that's part why it's done such wonders for me. You know, if it happens, it happens. I'm prepared for it. Fingers crossed it doesn't happen. But if it does, I've been through it once before. It can't be as bad as that was.
Right. Well, at least you're protected by, you know, the roll cage and the car, whereas in your first accident there with the motorcycle, you weren't protected at all.
No, it was just my leg that was the protection. And that didn't protect me much either.
No, apparently not. Ugh. So I'd like for you to introduce us to those trophies behind you. Is that possible?
Should we start with the big one? So this was actually...
Or you can work your way up. Yes.
You want to work your way up? Let's work the way up then. So
yeah, let's work our way up. That's more fun.
These two, third in class from my first ever race weekend with Team BRIT. So when we were doing the Brit Car Trophy, we actually had two separate races on the same day, both 50 minutes long. And that was my introduction into motorsport, was taking home 2 third places, which if anyone had ever asked me, you know, one day you're going to be a race driver, or told me even, if one day you're going to be a race driver and you're going to win or take home trophies, I'd have been like, I'm disabled, can't do that. But I've got nice little keepsakes that remind me that I can actually do it. Then
that's right.
These two behind me are from Donington Park last year, I believe. Yeah. So that's my second place finish trophy, and then my third place in the championship. So they're both pretty big ones to me.
Great.
But then
that's a driver's championship, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Then
excellent.
This was second place literally this weekend at Alton Park, which was probably the best race I've ever taken part in. You know, it's one of the tightest circuits within the UK. It's so narrow that overtaking opportunities are just where you can make it. You know, it's 2 separate chicanes, a hairpin. It's a real tough circuit. And I've only ever raced there once before in a tiny little BMW 116. So I was essentially just pottering around at the back of the grid. So to be racing there in an Aston Martin GT4 and, you know, coming home with a second place, it should have been first place if we didn't get the penalty. It would have been first place. But I don't care. I'm so happy with this, more so because I didn't expect it to happen. You know, myself and Luke, we've only raced there once in the past. And then this is our first place trophy from Silverstone, which is just incredible. You know, our first race weekend in an Aston Martin GT4, and we come home in first place.
Wow.
Again, time and time
chills
goes
everywhere right now.
Yeah. You know, time and time goes to prove that disability really doesn't matter in the world of motorsport. But I think to prove the point of that, my personal favourite is actually this little one. So that is the Sunoco Driver of the Weekend Award from Racing at Brands Hatch. For the effort that we put in as a team, but myself as a driver in our 2 races that we had there. And to come home with that as, you know, one of 2 disabled drivers that were racing there and being the driver of the weekend, you know, this isn't awarded by just someone through Britcar. This is actually awarded by the media and all of the crew that they have there, everyone putting out the live stream and the television broadcast. So for me to come home with this and have someone say, actually, you were the top driver that weekend, when there was not just the Britcar Trophy Series racing there, but several different series racing there that weekend. Nice. That one hit home. You know, that was when I thought, actually, do you know what? We can do this, and I can do this. So for me, that's my personal favourite. Yeah. But
congratulations on that. That's awesome.
That's very awesome.
Thank you very much. You know, I think that the best thing here, though, is, I actually listen to Alice in Chains and Slayer and Korn before I go out racing. So I think this is a trophy moment for me as well, being with the producer for those guys. It's just, yeah, it's full circle now is the
That's
best way to put it.
fabulous.
It's come full circle.
Can you listen to music while you're racing or no?
Sadly not, no. I wish I could at times, but
Right.
we don't have a sound system in the car. We've got earpieces, so we can communicate with the crew. And I'm sure if I asked them to, they'd probably play a little something down it for me. But yeah, the only time I get to really listen to music at a race weekend is if I sit in the car and I'll just pull away in my own personal car at the back of the racetrack and just crank everything up full volume. In fact, the weekend that I took the driver of the weekend trophy away, before the race, I was sat in the car listening to Pantera, Revolution Is My Name. And I had that cranked full blast. And I think that's what made me push so hard. But then you'll appreciate this. Sat in the car at Silverstone. I sat there listening to Korn, Freak on a Leash, as loud as physically possible, to the point that we actually blew out one of the speakers in the car. And I haven't told my girlfriend that yet.
All right.
Just her car. When she sees this, she's going to be so annoyed. Sorry, babe.
The dog.
That's fabulous, dude. Well, you'll have to get it repaired. It's okay.
At least it's cheaper to repair than a race car.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Very true. So, what's next for Mr. Tucker?
What's next? So we're racing at Snetterton in May. Then we're at Silverstone in June. And then we've got 2 races at Donington as well. So we've got quite a lot coming up. We've got some media days happening with the team. But as I say, my main goal this season is proving that I can do this and get myself into British GT. That's where I want to be racing next year. So there's a lot of hard work going in behind the scenes. I'm trying to eat healthily, keep fit, which is quite tricky when you can't go running and you can't ride a push bike. So I've got to do my cardio in a slightly different way to other people. I can't go swimming either, because if I try and do a front crawl, I'm just going to go around in circles.
Bless you.
I'm glad you have a sense of humor about it, sir.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think if you haven't got a sense of humor over the crap that you go through in life, you're not going to be able to carry on. You've got to see the funny side of things sometimes. I mean, I like it when people normalize my disability by saying something as simple as, are you sure you're going to be able to reach up to the top shelf? Because I can't. I find it funny. I see no harm in having a little joke with people and normalizing it and taking that stigma away from disability. Because at the end of the day, we're human. We can smile, we can laugh, or we can cry about it. I'd much rather laugh and smile about it. So I'd much rather people did the same with me. I don't want to be seen as different to somebody else. I see life that there should be no indifference between other people. So if I can normalize my own disability, hopefully other people find that they can as well.
So we asked you earlier what was next for you, but what's next for Team BRIT?
So the next big thing for Team BRIT is the guys are actually starting in the British GT, rolling up on April 18th, I believe. That's going to be their first race of the season. And that is, the biggest GT series in Britain. So we've got Bobby and Aaron racing in that. Bobby is highly autistic. He's a young lad as well. He's only 22 years old, but he's one of the best drivers on the team. His ability to focus on track, and not just that, but read things that are coming up ahead of him is fantastic. I always explain it, and so does the team, that his brain is essentially a supercomputer for motorsport. His ability to analyze things is just staggering. And then we have Aaron driving with him as well. He's paraplegic, so he's paralyzed from the chest down. He was involved in a motocross accident when he was around 15 years old. He actually, I believe, stopped breathing, and his heart stopped for 5 minutes. And he was then taken into hospital and woke up paralyzed. But he's never let that stop him. And I find him one of the most inspirational people to be around. He's such a nice guy, and you can have such a good laugh with him as well. I think that's the brilliant thing about the team, is none of us have let it break our spirits. What we've gone through, we kind of use as a tool to move forward. Because at the end of the day,
That's awesome.
tragedy can strike at any moment, and it's how you rebuild yourself after that. And I think Aaron's
That's
philosophy of, just get back in the saddle and go racing is the
Yeah,
perfect
totally.
philosophy for everyone out there, including myself. It's what I've followed on from. So yeah,
Right.
there's plenty of big things coming for Team Brit. They're racing all across the UK. They're racing at Spa over in Belgium as well. So I'm really excited for those boys. Then we've got more rookies racing with us at Snetterton in May. I believe that's going to be James Whitley, who's a Winter Paralympic skier, which is crazy to me. I'd love to go
Okay.
skiing, but I don't think my foot would allow me to.
Right.
It'd be no good with one foot pointing off down the wrong way. I'd just be going sideways. But he's,
Right.
he's never done a race before, so it's going to be his first race weekend. I believe he's racing with Chris Overend, who has hip dysplasia, so his hips essentially pop out of place. He's had several surgeries over the years to try and correct it, but sadly, nothing has really worked. I believe then we have Tyrone, who's racing in our BMW 118 with a gentleman called Paul. They've had a pretty interesting season so far. Their first race weekend at Silverstone, they had quite a heavy impact on the car that ripped off quite a lot of the front end and had to be rebuilt in the middle of the race. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, they have a better one this time because, it'd just be nice to see them, actually succeed in motorsport and take home some trophies as well. Because they deserve it. They've put a lot of hard work and effort in coming through the academy, and I genuinely believe they've got what it takes to take home those podium finishes. And that's what's brilliant about everyone in the team. We want to see everyone else succeed. It's not just about personal success. It's about seeing our friends around us succeed as well. And the bond that we have with the mechanics in the team is fantastic. If you ever walked into our garage, you'd completely forget that we're all disabled because we have such a tight bond and we all get on so well that we can laugh, we can joke, but we can work together really hard at the same time. There's no indifference between anyone in the team, and that's what's brilliant about it.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I love it. So what was the URL for Team Brit again and the racing calendar? I'd like our viewers to check that out.
Yeah, our website is www.teambrit.co.uk. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got LinkedIn, all of the good social media platforms. I believe we've expanded onto TikTok now as well, although I have refused to take part in any TikTok videos because it's not that it's below me. I feel that I'm a little bit too old for the TikTok generation now. We've got plenty of stuff coming out on there. I'm pretty certain as well we've got a documentary coming up at some point in time soon, so that'll be an interesting one to see.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, we'll be looking out for that for sure.
Most definitely.
I'll definitely send you the link if and when it happens. I'm not 100% sure if it's actually going ahead yet, but there are plans in the making for it.
That's awesome. Well, Andy, thank you. This has been a very informative and extremely high-octane episode, and I loved all the stories and learning even more about you, your history, and what you're up to now. And thank you, Team Brit, especially for taking the time to be part of this episode of My Right Stuff.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. It's been too long. We'll definitely get together soon and talk further about the good old, bad old days. And it's just been an absolute blast. No star, you beautiful people. Peace out. Take care.
And I'm your host, Lord Rage Wright. And this has been another informative and very fast-paced episode of My Right Stuff. Catch up with us again, and remember to listen loud, play hard, and keep reaching for your dreams. Good night.
Do you suffer from insomnia, depression, or anxiety? Well, our sponsor, TAUMMHOMS, may be able to help you in these areas. TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal, helping people globally get to sleep faster and stay asleep for longer, and you can find this piece of gold at www.taumms.com. That's www.taummmhoms.com. Most of all, I'd like to thank all of you beautiful people who stream, download, watch, and support My Right Stuff. And please keep spreading the word because we really, really appreciate it. Also, we now have a My Right Stuff store where you can pick up some lovely snazzy merch for those beautiful bodies. Just go to myrightstuff.com and click on the store tab. And don't forget to tag us in any photos of the merch so we can include you in a future episode. Please also be sure to subscribe to the podcast channel of your choice, as well as our YouTube channel. Toby says it'll give you 10 years good luck. I'm not so sure. I think it's maybe more. This has been another amazing episode of My Right Stuff, and please be sure to tune in this week, next week, and every week for yet another adventurous and informative show. I'm your co-host, Sir Gareth Dighton, and thank you, my lovelies, for tuning in. No star, you beautiful people, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching My Right Stuff. This episode was brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taumms.com. That's www.taummmhoms.com.